All right, so the heat transfer from the IHS to the cooler, it's critical for good Ryzen 7000 temperatures. So we're going to find out which one of these guys is going to do the best job. Welcome to Machines More. So some custom loop content today. Combo CPU blocks for AM5. Now, quick background, these are liquid cooling blocks for your CPU, which also house a pump that's directly mounted on top or attached to the CPU block. And this is not something you typically see outside of a small form factor custom loop. Usually you would have a separate pump res unit, and that greatly expands the available options as well as simplifying the film process. So the reason you'd want one of these, well, it's space. Lots of small SFF builds, they just don't have space for even a compact pump res. And while you could plumb a separate pump only unit in line to your loop, the combo block, it's generally a good choice. You don't need as many fittings, and yeah, it's all in one. Kind of like an all-in-one. It's a niche product though, and there's not going to be too many to choose from. So I have 3 on hand today. These were provided by the manufacturers for the testing. A big thanks to them, but I'm not paid by them for this content or this review. And you can expect independent and well-researched review findings here. So let's talk through these real quick before we get into performance. All of these will take Lang DDC pumps. Those are a lot smaller than D5s and ideal for this type of application. First off, this one is the Lobo from a company called ModUltra. I've actually been using this one for more than a year now. This was the CPU block that I used in the T1V2 custom loop with a 12700K. Same one. And while you do have to specify Intel or AMD when you order, you can get the mounting hardware to go the other way if you do end up changing sockets. So it is convenient. The Coldplate here, it's solid copper. And the main body of this block is brass. It's very, very heavy, hefty. So brass makes this perfectly fine. If you are using a copper rad, there is no aluminum in the material that contacts the liquid. Very hefty, like I mentioned. The tallest point, though, is if you use the optional ModUltra heatsink, is 45 millimeters from the Coldplate. It's very low. It's the lowest unit here that I've tested. CNC'd all around, beautiful block, and I really like this heatsink as well. Cerakote finish, and it has held up well. Coldplate, I counted 58 micro channels. You have G-Core inlet outlet, and this will sit below the top of the pump, so you do get a good amount of clearance. Middle, you do have a G and an 1/8 fill port, which is a little bit harder to find fittings for, but it's there if you choose to use it. Normally, I would put an alternate location for that, though. So I've had very positive results with this block in the past, and it's worked really well on LGA 1700. And I was eager to see how well it would work with AM5. So one option, like I mentioned, you can add on, it's this heatsink cover, and that's especially nice if you don't already have a heatsink that came with your pump. This will keep your pump cooler, and it looks very good together. I think that's the main reason why I would get this one, just because it looks good. This next one is very different. It's massive. It comes with a pump, and it also features a res. I've got it mounted on the board just to give you an idea of the footprint and how it fits in with the RAM kit here. It's the new EK Velocity 2 DDC. And this one is specific to AM5. There's a separate version for LGA 1700. It comes with the latest DDC 4.2 pump. It's a genuine one here. One of the differences with the 4.2 is that you have a SATA power versus Molex power for the 3.2s. The block's nickel-plated brass top here, it does make thermal contact inside with the pump, so this also serves as a built-in heatsink. Height to the very top, this unit is 59 millimeters. You've got some clear acrylic on the sides. You do have the inlet and outlet on top of the 59 millimeters, which may be a problem if you're height constrained there, but it does have side ports, and you see with the low profile kit, really no problem clearing that, so just plan accordingly. The Coldplate is nickel-plated copper, and I might have counted wrong due to how tiny it was, but I was at 49 channels in the Coldplate. So the good thing about this unit is that it does have that small res that you can fill from the top, or well, the top when you have it mounted like this, but the front here or the top. And this block does not mount like most CPU blocks because it mounts from the underside of your motherboard because there's nowhere to access it from the top. It comes with a Torx Driver that you will use to basically thread the bolts through this way. So when I was removing this after testing, I managed to mess it up. Total user error here, because even though I had just installed it by turning the bolts counterclockwise, after running the test, I was, just totally slipped my mind, and instinctively I went lefty, thinking it would go loosey, and I sheared the head of the bolt right off. So it's a very tiny bolt. So I did have to drill that one out. So if you do get this one, it probably would not be a bad idea to write something on the back plate or leave yourself a sticky, something obvious that might save you some trouble. But the bolt should be replaceable. You can just pop it open and pull it out and put a new one in. But yeah, it made me feel stupid. Oh, and it does have RGB if you want to do that. Last one here. It's from the folks that brought you the Steck mini-itx case. This one is the Aquanaut Extreme from Nouvolo, and it's a little bit different in that this one is made out of Acetal, and you will have to put it together when you get it. So some minor assembly required, but probably the most annoying thing was just that the O-ring was hard to seat in there. It is a good bit lighter than the ModUltra one, even though the size, it's fairly similar. Here you have a solid copper cold plate, and for the testing here, I just used the same pump as the Lobo with the heatsink installed, and that one measured in at 48.5 millimeters. So it's about 3.5 millimeters taller than the Lobo. You do have two G-quarter fill ports on the sides. Well, it's actually going to be the top and the bottom because it's going to mount this way. So you should have easy access to at least one of these, depending on how you've laid out your build. There's also a version with clear acrylic and a nickel-plated copper plate. Performance. One of these is significantly better than the others, and I was surprised the difference was so big, but this test, fairly straightforward. I paired it with a 280mm rad running two Silentwings 4 Pro 140mm fans, just the same throughout. And between the DDC 4.2 and DDC 3.2 pumps, because I use different pumps here, I kept the RPMs the same, and this was cooling a 7900X running at 5.4 gigahertz and 1.25 volts with an extended Cinebench R23 run. So the variable is really just the block. So let's take a look at the CPU temps. Boom. The Aquanaut Extreme, the EK, and the Aquanaut is a tiny little bit better, so I'd call those fairly similar. But yeah, the Lobo here is a significantly better performer here. That's a 5-degree gap here, which is an enormous gap when it comes to liquid cooling. At equilibrium, the coolant temps were within plus or minus 0.1 degrees of each other. So that's how you know you've hit equilibrium, because the temps are steady like that. But just to show this in terms of the delta over the coolant temps for another reference point. So yes, the Lobo is extremely, extremely good. And I've never directly compared it to other blocks in this fashion until now. So wow, I'm really amazed by this. So there are use cases for all of these though. But let's start with the Lobo, because block only, it's $160, and with a plain looking heatsink, not this one, this is the Wavy one. The plain one, it's altogether is $200, so you figure 280, 290 with a DDC 4.2. This and the Aquanaut, they're going to be tougher to fill, and I'll probably do a video on some tips for filling this type of thing shortly when I do a system rebuild. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, if you want the best performer with the most clearance, I think this one is going to be the go-to, because it also has incredibly good finish quality, made here in the US. And there is also an Acetal version, which is about $100, but I haven't tested that one out. Maybe I will get around to testing that one soon. This metal version though, it just feels so good. So I think it's well worth the extra. If you do have the clearance for this guy and also the fittings you'll need, the EK, it's simply going to be the easiest to use and maintain, simply because it has a res, and you pretty much have everything you need, because it even comes with thermal paste. It'll cost you though, because this one is about 365, 367 US. Now keep in mind, this is with a small res and the pump, the DDC 4.2 pump, so it's not exactly unjustified compared to the other ones. There's, simply more going on here that you get. As you've seen though, performance, it's absolutely fine, but not exceptional. And I think this will perform similarly to having a separate one of EK's Velocity blocks. And if you want to switch to Team Blue, yeah, it's not going to work. So that is one consideration if you do carry parts over a lot like I do. But if you are apprehensive of not filling, about properly filling your build and also keeping those air pockets at bay, this is going to be a standout product here, because the air bubbles will collect in these small res and you can just top it off really easily. And by far the most value-oriented one of these is the Acetal Aquanaut Extreme. It's somewhere around $100, right around, right now they have it at just $89. So for a really bare bones setup with, a simple DDC pump, you're looking at roughly $180. Now you could pair it with the ModUltra Heatsink as well if you wanted. Performance, it's pretty good, especially for how much this thing costs. And it's still compact too. Now I'm interested to compare it against the Acetal version for the ModUltra, but maybe for a future video. So I hope you enjoyed that content. Please like and subscribe, because it really helps the channel grow. So a big thank you for doing that. And I will have a few product links I'll leave down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.